Hey, it's Sherry. Welcome back to Canterbury Cottage. Thank you all for the lovely comments on last week's video. I'm so glad you liked it. And I am so sorry that I have not been able to respond to everyone. However, I did see several requests for DIY Christmas gift ideas. So that's what today's video is going to be about. I tried to come up with ideas for everyone on your list, especially those hard to buy for people. And of course, all of the projects are super budget friendly. I hope you'll stick around until the end because I'm going to be telling you about my big Amazon giveaway. Well, if you're ready for some gift ideas, let's get started. This first idea would make a great gift for just about anybody. Neighbors, teachers, co-workers. Print out these vintage labels in sizes to fit whatever empty glass jars you have on hand. Dollar Tree carries jars with red, gold, and green lids during the holiday season. Cut out the labels and decoupage them to the side of your jars. If you're using empty salsa and pickle jars like I sometimes do, you might want to spray paint the lid red or green. When using mason jars, I like to cover the round, flat lid part with decorative scrapbook paper. I use Mod Podge to adhere the scrapbook paper to the lid, and then I just go around the edges and cut the extra paper off. Add cocoa, marshmallows, and crushed up peppermint to create a hot cocoa bar. You might want to spray paint a thrifted basket to put your jars in. I think this is a fun gift idea that anyone would love to receive, and it was so budget friendly. I bought 4 jars, the thrifted basket, a bag of marshmallows, a bag of peppermints, and 2 boxes of hot chocolate mix, all for under $10. If you follow my channel, you know that I love books. So this next idea is one of my all-time favorite gift ideas. Look online for a quote from the book that you want to gift someone and print it out in a size to fit a frame, a plaque, or even a small wooden box. I decoupaged an Anne Frank quote to a small plaque that I had. When the Mod Podge was dry, I went around the edges with some fine grit sandpaper and then applied a protective top coat of Mod Podge. I tied a piece of ribbon around the plaque and the book and added a small star ornament. To go with the vintage Pinocchio book, I painted a small frame with red chalk paint, distressed it a bit, and then applied a little clear wax. I tied the book and frame together with some pretty ribbon and added a small Christmas ornament. To go with the Jane Eyre book, I sanded the design off of this small jewelry box, and then I painted it with a couple coats of black chalk paint. When the paint was dry, I distressed the edges a bit with some fine grit sandpaper. And then I printed out the Jane Eyre quote to fit the cover of the jewelry box. To adhere the quote to the jewelry box, I applied Mod Podge to the top of the box and to the back of the paper. When this was completely dry, I applied another coat of Mod Podge over the top of the paper to protect it. I think this is the perfect gift for any bibliophile on your list. If you're a bird lover like me, you're going to love this next gift idea. Using a bird nest you already own or one that you've thrifted, remove anything that looks too much like spring, such as the eggs or flowers. Put a little florist wire around some pine cones and attach them inside the bird nest. Add some pine stems. I use stems that I cut off of an old Christmas tree. Place a few small branches around the edge of your nest, and then cut up some berry stems and add those too. Lightly spray your nest and greenery with some spray adhesive, and then sprinkle on some fake snow. I decided to add a little red ornament with a bow. I made and printed out this label explaining the significance of a bird nest in a Christmas tree. I painted a small piece of wood. This is an extra base off of last week's birdhouses. Once the paint was dry, I cut out my label and decoupaged it to the little piece of wood. I drilled a small hole in the upper left-hand corner and used twine to tie it to the bird nest. Put the nest in a pretty box, and I think you have a lovely gift, much nicer than a store-bought ornament. I can never pass by an old Better Homes and Gardens cookbook when I see one at a thrift store, no matter its condition. And this one was in terrible condition. To make it gift-worthy, I started by removing all of the stained pages and setting the dividers aside. Then I went to work fixing the broken binding. I used Gorilla Tape on the inside and the outside to reattach the spine to the front cover and the back cover. To hide the tape and make it look pretty, I cut a strip of fabric to cover the spine of the book. Although it wasn't necessary, I applied a strip of double-sided carpet tape to the spine to hold my fabric in place. I ironed the piece of fabric, folding the edges under, and then I hot glued the edges over the spine of the book. I folded the top and bottom edges and glued them down on the inside of the book. I also glued a strip of rickrack along the edge of the fabric on both the front and back covers. I folded the ends of the rickrack over the edge and covered it with another strip of Gorilla Tape. I could have put the stained cookbook pages back in, but I wanted this book to be multi-purpose, so I returned the dividers but added plain pages of cardstock instead. I like to add an ornament to gifts, and so for this book, I took a plastic candy cane and covered it with strips of the same fabric that I used on the spine of the cookbook. You just need a little drop of hot glue at the start and finish of each piece of fabric. To dress it up, I tied on a little raffia, hot glued on a few buttons and a bow. The inside of the front and back covers were very stained, and so I covered them with pictures that I cut from the original cookbook pages. I applied these with glue stick. You could use this book for so many different things. For example, it could be a photo album, a scrapbook, a journal, a sketchbook, or it could be a recipe book. I wanted to include some gift ideas for men, so here's one idea. Let's turn an old metal toolbox into a desk organizer. Using a hammer, I took apart a silverware organizer that I had purchased at Goodwill for a couple dollars. I reassembled it inside the toolbox, attaching everything with super glue. I only had to cut a couple pieces of wood, which I was able to do with my miter shears.
Originally, I was going to use the Dollar Tree mini crates or wood boxes, but the crates were too long for my very narrow toolbox. Once the dividers were arranged and glued inside the toolbox, I went over all of the wood pieces with a couple coats of navy blue acrylic paint. I also superglued some small clothespins on the inside of the lid to hold envelopes or notes. I like the vintage rusty appearance of my thrifted toolbox, but if you want a cleaner look, you could spray paint both the outside and inside of your toolbox. I often see fireplace match holders at the thrift store and thought that it might make a good gift for someone with a fireplace. I popped off the fleur-de-lis and gave it a couple coats of dark green spray paint. To hide the holes from the fleur-de-lis, I attached a metal star with some super glue. There are openings in the metal holder on the bottom for the striker to show through, but the box of matches I purchased had the striker on the side of the box, so I cut it out and hot glued it to the bottom of the box. I thought an ornament made from wood branches would be an appropriate adornment for this gift. To start, I cut 4 branches to the same length. I hot glued little cross pieces near both ends of 2 of the sticks. I created a plus sign with those 2 sticks and glued them together in the center. And then I took a 3rd stick and glued it to the center, going diagonally across the first 2 sticks. I created another diagonal line using the 4th stick, which I cut in half and then glued each half on either side of the center. To reinforce the sticks, I applied super glue to the center on both sides. I cut 8 1-inch pieces of stick at a 45-degree angle with my miter shears. I glued 2 of these to the ends of each of the remaining sticks to create a V shape. I was now ready to embellish my snowflake-shaped stick ornament. I hot glued some greenery to the center, and then I glued on some buttons and a small gingham bow. I sprayed on some spray adhesive and then sprinkled on some fake snow. Finally, I drilled a hole in the end of one of the sticks and ran some twine through. I used some jute to tie the ornament to the matchbook holder, but you could just wrap them together in one gift bag or box. I had been wanting to make a bathtub tray for myself for quite a while, and I finally thought of an easy way to do it without having to build it completely from scratch. I would use a shutter. I had a couple in my garage that were 28 inches long, which was the perfect size. I removed all of the hardware and the tilt rod and all of the staples that had been holding the tilt rod. Then I removed every other louver so that the remaining louvers would lie flat. I applied super glue to the ends of each louver to adhere them to the stiles and to hold the louver permanently in its horizontal position. I did this on both sides of the shutter. Then I filled the hardware holes with some wood fill. I put the tray across my bathtub and marked where I should attach the wooden bumpers. These would keep the tray from slipping off of the edge of the tub. I just used wood strips taken from an old magazine rack. I attached them first with super glue and then with 2 screws. I spray painted the entire thing with Zinsser primer, and then I filled in the cracks between the louvers and the stiles with some white caulk. When the caulk was dry, I painted the entire shutter with a couple coats of white chalk paint. I thought some bath accessories like homemade bath salts would be a nice addition for this gift. I put the bath salt in an empty jar that I had, and then I decoupaged a pretty vintage label onto the side of the jar and then another one to the lid of the jar. I pressed the paper on the lid to get an indentation of the shape so that I could cut out the perfectly sized circle. I tied a ribbon around the jar and added a couple stems of dried lavender that I had on hand. Although I think this would make a great gift for someone, I think we all know I'm keeping this one. This next gift idea is something that I make and sell in my booth every year over the holidays. I ask for and receive free olive and pickle jars from a local restaurant. Then I make vinyl labels on my Cricut machine or print out pretty vintage labels like this one to attach to the jars with Mod Podge. I paint the lids with coordinating colors of chalk paint, and then when the paint is dry, I distress the lids and apply a little clear wax. I fill the jars with cookie cutters that I've thrifted throughout the year, and I use one cookie cutter as an ornament to hang on the outside of the jar. I also like to attach a vintage recipe card with a sugar cookie recipe on the outside of the jar. Here's a fun idea for the sports fan on your list. Pick up one of those large glass beverage decanters. I see them at the thrift store all the time. Remove the spigot. Usually it will just unscrew. Make or buy vinyl decals of the recipient's favorite sports team logos. Insert Christmas lights in the sports team colors through the spigot hole, leaving the plug or the battery pack on the outside of the jar. Because my decanter was so large, I decided to fill it up with some inexpensive ornaments from Dollar Tree in coordinating colors. You could fill the jar with baseballs, golf balls, mini basketballs, or even pom-poms. I recently picked up a couple pillow shams at Goodwill and thought I would turn them into throw pillows with a pocket. I cut about 1/3 off of the length of the sham, making sure that the opening on the back for the pillow form was on the larger side that I was keeping. I wanted the pillow form to be perfectly centered between the 2 sets of red stripes, so it was necessary for me to rip out the decorative stitching along one end of the pillow sham. I turned the sham inside out and sewed closed the opening that I had created when I cut the sham in two. I also stitched along both sides to make the pillow smaller and square-shaped rather than longer and rectangular shaped. I cut off the excess fabric and then turned the sham right side out. I ironed on this vintage sleigh image using Avery transfers for light-colored fabrics. I inserted a pillow form using the pocket on the back side, and then I tucked a book inside the pocket too for a fun gift idea. I like the idea of coordinating the transfer image with the book that you're tucking inside.
I know I struggle coming up with new gift ideas every year. So I hope that I shared some ideas with you today that you can actually use this Christmas. As you may have noticed, I am about to reach 75,000 subscribers. Crazy, I know. And I want to show my genuine appreciation to all of my loyal subscribers. So I'm going to be giving away 10 $75 Amazon gift cards. If you would like to be entered in the giveaway, all you have to do is comment on today's video telling me what you would most like to see in an upcoming Christmas-themed video. And I'm not going to draw out this contest. I'm going to announce the winners next week so that you can get the gift cards in plenty of time for Christmas. Well, that's all for today. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next Tuesday. Bye-bye for now.